Travelers specifically visit Earth during human holiday seasons for joy. Part 1. Dr. Sarah stared at the screen in her lab, her coffee growing cold in her hand. The readings made no sense. For 3 months now, she had been tracking strange energy patterns that appeared and disappeared across the planet. At first, she thought her equipment was broken. Then she thought it might be solar flares or some new kind of atmospheric phenomenon. But the patterns were too regular, too precise. The energy spikes always happened during celebrations. Christmas in New York, Diwali in Mumbai, Lunar New Year in Beijing, Eid in Cairo, Thanksgiving in Chicago. Every time humans gathered to celebrate, these mysterious readings appeared. The energy would surge, hold steady for hours or days, then vanish completely. Sarah had been a physicist for 15 years, working at the United Nations Research Division. Most people didn't even know UNIRD existed. The organization had been formed quietly after scientists discovered that their reality wasn't the only one. Other dimensions existed, layered on top of each other like sheets of paper in a book. But until now, no one had found a way to cross between them. She ran the numbers again, checking her calculations for the 100th time. The energy signatures were definitely coming from somewhere else, somewhere beyond normal space. Something was opening doorways into Earth's dimension, but only during human holidays. "You're going to wear out that keyboard," said her colleague, walking into the lab with 2 fresh cups of coffee. He set one down beside her, still obsessing over the holiday anomalies. "Look at this." Sarah pulled up a map of the world covered in glowing points. Tokyo, New Year's Eve. The readings were off the charts. Whatever is creating these rifts, it's getting stronger, or there are more of them. Leaned closer, studying the data. His eyes widened. "Sarah, some of these readings are from inside buildings, inside homes. If something is coming through these rifts..." "We need to see it happen," Sarah said. "The next major holiday is Christmas. That's 6 weeks away. We need to set up observation posts in major cities. If something is visiting Earth, we need to know what it wants." The director of UNIRD, an older woman named Doctor, approved Sarah's request. She seemed more worried than excited. "If something is coming to Earth during our most vulnerable times, when families are together and people are distracted, we need to know if it's a threat." Sarah spent the next 6 weeks preparing. She placed sensors in shopping centers, churches, and public squares across 12 major cities. She recruited a team of researchers to monitor the data on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Everything was ready. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear in Tokyo. Sarah sat in a mobile command center parked near Crossing, one of the busiest intersections in the world. Around her, screens showed live feeds from dozens of cameras. The streets were packed with people. Couples walked hand in hand. Families took photos under the bright lights. Street vendors sold roasted chestnuts and hot drinks. "Energy readings starting to climb," announced from his station. Same signature as before, but stronger. Sarah watched the screens intently. The crowds continued moving normally, unaware that anything was happening. Then she saw it. On one of the monitors, a shimmer appeared in the air above the crowd. It looked like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but the night was freezing. The shimmer into something almost invisible, like looking at a soap bubble or oil on water. It had a vague shape, roughly humanoid but flowing and uncertain, as if it couldn't quite decide what form to take. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah whispered. More of them appeared, dozens, then hundreds. They floated above the crowds, drifting between buildings, hovering near groups of people. They didn't touch anyone or anything. They just watched. Sarah's hands shook as she zoomed in one of the cameras. The beings, if that's what they were, seemed to be focusing on the faces of the people below. When a couple stopped to kiss under the lights, 3 of the entities moved closer, hovering just above them. When a father lifted his daughter onto his shoulders so she could see better, 2 more entities drifted over to observe. "They're watching us," said quietly, But they're not doing anything else. They're just watching. The same thing happened in every city they monitored. Paris, London, New York, Sydney, Mexico City. Everywhere humans gathered to celebrate, these mysterious beings appeared and observed silently. They stayed for hours, then vanished as the celebrations ended. Sarah knew they had to make contact. They had to understand what was happening. But how do you talk to something that exists between dimensions? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A street musician in London had set up his guitar near Square on Christmas Day. He was playing carols for the crowds, his guitar case open for donations. One of the entities had drifted very close to him, hovering just a few feet away. The musician later told reporters he felt something strange, like a warm pressure in his chest. On impulse, he changed his song to something original, something he'd written about missing his late mother during the holidays. The entity moved even closer. Sarah watched the recording dozens of times. The being seemed to pulse in rhythm with the music. When the musician sang about love and loss, the entity's form became more solid, more defined. It was responding to the emotion in the music. That gave Sarah an idea. If these beings responded to emotion, maybe emotion was how they could communicate. She designed a device that could convert emotional states into energy patterns, then broadcast those patterns as a kind of signal. It was experimental and probably wouldn't work, but she had to try. 3 weeks later, during a smaller festival in Mumbai, Sarah activated her device for the first time. She set it to broadcast feelings of welcome, curiosity, and peaceful intent. The entities appeared as expected, drawn by the celebrating crowds. Then one of them changed direction. It moved towards Sarah's position. Sarah's heart pounded as the being approached. Up close, it was beautiful in a strange way, like watching light move through crystal. It hovered in front of her device, and Sarah felt that same warm pressure in her chest that the musician had described. Then it spoke, not with words but with feelings that appeared directly in her mind. Curiosity, wonder, gratitude, and something else, something that took Sarah a moment to identify: sadness. Deep, ancient sadness. Sarah adjusted her device, trying to send a question. What are you? Why are you here? The response came slowly, as if the being was learning how to communicate as it went. Images filled Sarah's mind. Vast cities made of light. Civilizations spanning entire dimensions. Technology so advanced it seemed like magic. But in all those images, something was missing. The beings in those cities moved with purpose but without passion. They created wonders but felt no joy in creation. They existed but didn't truly live. More feelings came, and with them, understanding. These beings had evolved beyond emotion millions of years ago. They had achieved perfect logic, perfect efficiency. They had eliminated all the messy, inefficient feelings that caused conflict and pain. But they had also eliminated everything that made existence meaningful. Then they discovered Earth. They found humans, creatures who still felt everything deeply, who created celebrations for no reason other than to feel happy together, who gathered in the cold to sing songs and share meals, who cried at weddings and laughed at silly jokes and hugged each other when words weren't enough. The being sent one more feeling to Sarah: hunger, not for food or energy, but for something they had lost so long ago they had forgotten its name. They came to Earth during holidays because that's when human emotion was strongest, when joy and love and hope filled the air like light. They came to remember what it felt like to feel. Sarah understood then. These beings weren't invaders or threats. They were tourists, coming to experience something their own civilizations had lost forever. They came to Earth not to take, but to witness. They came because humans had something no advanced technology could replicate. They came because humans knew how to be happy together. Part 2. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Beings were visiting during human holidays to experience emotions they could no longer feel themselves. Some people were terrified. Others were angry, feeling spied upon during their most private family moments. But many were simply amazed. Sarah became the primary liaison between Earth and the beings she had started calling the visitors. Through her emotion translation device, she learned more about them each day. The visitors came from hundreds of different dimensions, each one home to civilizations that had followed similar paths. They had reached technological transcendence and lost their capacity for genuine feeling in the process. The entity Sarah communicated with most often chose a name from human language. It called itself wavelength, after the physics term. Wavelength explained that across the multiverse, Earth was famous. Its emotional signature could be detected from dimensions away, burning like a beacon in the vast emptiness. Your species is unique, Wavelength communicated through feelings and images. We have searched for millions of your years. No other world generates what you create during your celebrations. Hope, joy, love given freely, peace chosen despite conflict. These things resonate across dimensional boundaries. The United Nations called an emergency assembly. Representatives from every nation gathered to decide what Earth's response should be. Some wanted to ban the visitors entirely, calling them parasites feeding on human emotion. Others saw opportunity, demanding technology in exchange for allowing the observations to continue. Dr. Sarah's director presented the scientific findings. "These beings aren't taking anything from us," she explained to the assembly. "Human emotion isn't a finite resource. When we feel joy, we don't have less of it because someone observed it. If anything, sharing happiness often creates more of it." After weeks of heated debate, the UN reached a decision. The visitors could continue their observations during major holidays, but with strict rules. They had to remain invisible to normal human sight. They couldn't interfere with any human activities, and they had to share knowledge about the multiverse, helping Earth understand its place in the larger reality. The visitors agreed immediately. For them, the chance to experience human emotion was worth any price. The first official holiday observation was scheduled for the following December. Scientists around the world prepared instruments to study the phenomenon. News channels announced they would provide continuous coverage. Everyone wanted to witness this moment when Earth would knowingly share its celebrations with beings from beyond reality. Sarah spent months working with Wavelength to create better communication methods. The emotion translation device evolved into something more sophisticated, allowing for actual conversations instead of just simple feelings and images. Through these talks, Sarah learned about the visitors' worlds. Wavelength described cities that stretched across entire planets, where billions of beings lived in perfect harmony because no one felt anger or jealousy or fear. It described technology that could reshape matter with a thought, that could move between dimensions as easily as humans walked between rooms. It described immortality achieved through consciousness transfer, where death had been eliminated entirely. "It sounds perfect," Sarah said during one conversation. "It is empty," Wavelength responded, its form pulsing with something like regret. "We have everything except a reason to have it. We build wonders but cannot wonder at them. We create beauty but cannot feel beautiful. We exist in paradise and cannot feel joy about it. Your species lives shorter lives in a harsher universe, yet you have something infinitely more valuable. You have each other and you know it matters." December arrived with unusual excitement. People prepared for the holidays knowing they would have an audience beyond anything in human history. Some found it uncomfortable, but most embraced it. If beings from across the multiverse wanted to see humanity at its best, then humanity would show them exactly that. On Christmas Eve, the visitors arrived in numbers far greater than ever before. Sarah's instruments detected millions of them, appearing in every city, every town, every small village where humans gathered to celebrate. They filled the air like invisible snow, observing everything. In New York, families gathered in Times Square to watch the lights and sing carols. The visitors hovered above them, drawn to the sound of thousands of voices joined together. In a small village in Norway, 3 generations sat down to a Christmas dinner in a farmhouse, and the visitors crowded around the table, watching as the family laughed and told old stories. In Manila, a midnight mass filled a cathedral with candlelight and prayer, and the visitors drifted through the aisles like ghosts, present for a kind of worship they could no longer feel. Then something unexpected happened. In Brazil, a technical malfunction in the cloaking system some visitors used made several of them visible. People in a crowded square suddenly saw shimmering, translucent figures floating above them. Panic started to spread. Sarah watched the feeds from her command center, her heart sinking. This was what everyone had feared. If people became scared, the whole agreement could collapse. The visitors might be banned. This moment of connection across dimensions might end before it truly began. But then a little girl, maybe 7 years old, did something remarkable. She was holding her mother's hand in the crowd when she looked up and saw one of the visitors hovering nearby. Instead of screaming or running, she smiled. She pulled her hand free from her mother's grasp and walked directly toward the shimmering figure. The crowd went silent. The girl's mother called out, but the girl didn't stop. She reached into the small bag she was carrying and pulled out something wrapped in paper, a piece of Christmas cake her family had made that morning. She held it up toward the visitor. "Do you want some?" she asked in Portuguese. "It's really good. My grandma made it." The visitor lowered itself until it was at the girl's eye level. Through the emotion translation systems that were monitoring the event, Sarah felt what the visitor felt: confusion, wonder, and then, breaking through millions of years of emotional emptiness, something else: gratitude, pure, overwhelming gratitude. The visitor couldn't eat the cake, of course. It didn't have a physical form that worked that way. But the gesture, the simple kindness from this small human, resonated across dimensional boundaries. Every visitor observing Earth felt it. The image of the girl offering cake to the being spread across every news network within minutes. It became a symbol of what this moment meant. Humanity wasn't being invaded or studied. Humanity was sharing. Sharing its joy, its traditions, its simple kindness with beings who had forgotten what those things felt like. The panic dissolved into celebration. People began waving at the visitors they could now see. Some held up their phones to take pictures. Others simply smiled and went back to their festivities, now knowing they had an audience that genuinely appreciated what they were witnessing. By the end of the night, something had shifted in the relationship between Earth and the visitors. It was no longer just observation. It was participation, even if the visitors could only watch. They were guests at humanity's celebration, and humanity had decided to welcome them. Wavelength communicated with Sarah as the night ended. "We came here empty," it said. "We leave having felt for just a moment what we lost. Your species has given us a gift beyond measure. We wish to give something in return." "What could you possibly give us that we don't already have?" Sarah asked. "Hope," Wavelength answered. "We will show you that the path we took is not inevitable, that you can advance, can grow, can reach the stars without losing what makes you human. We will teach you everything we know, but we will learn from you how to remain who you are while becoming more than you are." Sarah smiled. "That seems like a fair trade." Part 3. The years that followed brought changes no one could have predicted. The visitors kept their promise to share knowledge. They taught Earth about dimensional physics, about energy systems that didn't pollute, about medicine that could cure diseases that had plagued humanity for. Earth's technology advanced by centuries in just a few years. But Sarah noticed something else happening, something more subtle. The visitors weren't just observing anymore. They were helping. During Diwali in Delhi, festival lights that should have burned out after a few hours kept glowing through the entire celebration. Engineers examined them afterward and found nothing unusual, yet they had used no power at all. During Hanukkah in Jerusalem, Families reported that their candles burned brighter and steadier than they ever had before, never flickering even in the wind. Sarah confronted Wavelength about it. "You're not supposed to interfere. That was the agreement." "We are not interfering," Wavelength responded. "We are amplifying. Your people create the joy. We simply help it shine a little brighter. Is that wrong?" Sarah didn't know how to answer. Technically, it violated the agreement. But how could she tell them to stop making holidays more beautiful? She decided to report it to Doctor and let the UN decide. The UN held another assembly to discuss the issue. After much debate, they reached a conclusion. The visitors could continue their small enhancements as long as they remained subtle and didn't fundamentally change the nature of human celebrations. The goal was to amplify human joy, not replace it. The relationship deepened over the following years. The visitors became an expected part of human holidays. Children grew up knowing that during festivals and celebrations, friendly beings from other dimensions would be watching and sharing in the happiness. Some people even started creating celebrations specifically designed to generate strong positive emotions for the visitors to experience. But 5 years after first contact, Sarah discovered something troubling. She was analyzing long-term data on energy readings when she noticed a decline. The signal that attracted the visitors in the first place was getting weaker. She pulled up data from around the world. In many regions, holiday celebrations were becoming less frequent, less genuine. Commercial pressures had turned some festivals into mere shopping opportunities. Social stress and economic hardship meant fewer families could gather together. Political conflicts divided communities that once celebrated as one. The joy was fading. Sarah called an emergency meeting with Wavelength. "Is your presence somehow draining our capacity for emotion? Are you taking more than we realized?" "No," Wavelength responded, its form pulsing with concern. "The opposite is true. We give energy, we do not take it. The weakening comes from within your own species. You are forgetting why you celebrate. You are losing what made you special." Doctor organized a research team to study the phenomenon. What they discovered was sobering. In a world advancing rapidly through technology, humans were becoming more isolated. People worked longer hours. Families lived farther apart. Communities fractured along political and economic lines. The very progress that the visitors had helped enable was pulling humans away from each other. "This has happened before," Wavelength told Sarah when she shared the findings. "We have watched it across dimensions. Species reach a certain level of development and face a choice. They can maintain their emotional connections and advance more slowly, or they can sacrifice connection for rapid progress. Most choose progress. That is how we became what we are. That is how we lost everything." "You're saying we're heading down the same path you took." Sarah felt cold despite the warm lab. "It is not inevitable," Wavelength said, "but it is the easier path. Maintaining connection takes work. Choosing to be together when you could be efficient instead. Choosing to feel when you could be logical instead. Your species is approaching a turning point. Which will you choose?" Sarah brought this information to the UN. The news spread across Earth quickly, and it triggered something unexpected. People started talking about what really mattered to them. Families made time to be together, even when it was inconvenient. Communities organized celebrations they had let lapse years ago. People chose connection over convenience. But Sarah knew it wasn't enough. Human nature being what it was, this burst of renewed connection would fade eventually. They needed something permanent, something that would remind humanity forever of what made them special. The idea came to her during a quiet moment in her lab. She was alone, thinking about everything that had happened, when Wavelength appeared unexpectedly. "I have something to show you," it said. "It is time you knew the truth." Wavelength shared images with Sarah, memories from long before humans existed. Images of the visitors watching Earth across millions of years of evolution. Watching as early humans learned to work together, to share food, to comfort each other. The visitors had been protecting Earth for ages, quietly diverting asteroids, shielding the planet from cosmic radiation, keeping other dimensional threats away. Why? Sarah asked, stunned. Why would you do all that? Because we recognize something rare, Wavelength explained. We have explored countless dimensions. We have found millions of civilizations. But in all that vastness, we found only a handful of species that naturally chose connection over power, that celebrated together without being forced, that felt genuine joy in each other's happiness. Species like yours are precious beyond measure. You are not just creating joy for yourselves. You are creating something that resonates across all dimensions. Wavelength showed Sarah more. The emotional energy from Earth's celebrations didn't just stay on Earth. It radiated outward across dimensional boundaries. In the visitors' home dimensions, scientists had noticed something extraordinary. After decades of exposure to Earth's emotional resonance, some of their people were beginning to feel again. Faintly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Earth wasn't just a tourist destination. Earth was healing the multiverse. Sarah realized the magnitude of what Wavelength was telling her. Humanity wasn't weak for feeling deeply. Humanity wasn't primitive for needing each other. Humanity's capacity for joy, for love, for choosing to be together even when it was hard, that was the most powerful force in all dimensions. She knew what needed to happen next. Sarah proposed the creation of Unity Day, a new global holiday dedicated to celebrating human connection. It would incorporate traditions from every culture, a day when the entire planet would stop and simply be together. No work, no conflict, no division. Just humanity choosing joy together. The proposal gained support quickly. People from every nation contributed ideas. Unity Day would be held on the spring equinox, a day of balance between light and dark. Every community would celebrate in their own way, but all at the same time. There would be music, food, stories, and most importantly, time spent with the people you loved. The first Unity Day arrived on a perfect March morning. Sarah stood in a park in New York, surrounded by thousands of people. Similar scenes were happening across every city, every town, every village on Earth. Billions of humans, all celebrating together. The visitors came in numbers that overwhelmed Sarah's instruments. Millions of them from hundreds of dimensions, all drawn to this unprecedented wave of collective human joy. And this time, they didn't hide. By agreement with Earth, they made themselves visible. Sarah watched as shimmering figures filled the sky above the park. They drifted through the crowds, and people reached out to them, not with fear but with welcome. Children laughed and tried to touch them. Adults smiled and waved. The boundaries between dimensions, between species, between different ways of existing, all became thin and meaningless in that moment of shared celebration. Then Wavelength did something unprecedented. It descended into the crowd near Sarah, and for the first time it became truly solid. It took a rough humanoid form, still shimmering and uncertain, but present in a way it had never been before. "May I join you?" it asked, and Sarah could feel the hope in its voice. "Of course," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "That's what today is about." Around the world, other visitors did the same. They joined the dancing, awkward and uncertain but trying. They sat at tables where families shared meals. They stood in circles where people sang songs. They participated instead of just observing, and in doing so, they learned something they had forgotten across millions of years. They learned that joy is not something you can achieve alone. Joy is what happens when beings choose to be together, to share their brief moments of existence with each other, to create something beautiful not because it is efficient or logical, but because being together is what makes everything else worthwhile. As the sun set on the first Unity Day, Sarah received reports from scientists studying the dimensional readings. The emotional energy generated by the day's celebration was the strongest ever recorded. It would ripple across dimensions for years, touching civilizations that had been cold and empty for eons. Earth's message to the multiverse was clear. Advancement without connection is not progress. Technology without emotion is not civilization. Power without joy is not living. Humanity had reached for the stars and discovered it was already lighting the way for everyone else. Wavelength stood beside Sarah as the celebration continued into the night. "Thank you," it said simply. "Thank you for reminding us what we lost. Thank you for showing us it can be found again." Sarah smiled, watching humans and visitors dance together under the stars. "Thank you for teaching us that what we thought was weakness was actually our greatest strength. We thought we needed to become like you to advance. Instead, you came here to learn how to become like us again." "Perhaps," Wavelength said, and Sarah felt something from it she had never felt before. Happiness. Genuine, simple happiness. "Perhaps we can learn from each other. You teach us to feel, and we help you reach the stars without losing your heart. Together, we can create something neither of us could achieve alone." That night, as Unity Day drew to a close, Sarah looked up at the sky filled with shimmering visitors and thought about how far humanity had come. They had discovered they were not alone in the universe. They had learned that countless civilizations existed across dimensions beyond counting. They had found that despite having primitive technology and short lives, and all their flaws and conflicts, humans possessed something infinitely valuable. They knew how to be happy together. And in a vast, cold multiverse, that was the rarest and most precious thing of all. The celebrations would continue, year after year. Unity Day would become humanity's most important holiday, a reminder of what made them special. And the visitors would keep coming, keep learning, keep remembering what they had lost. Earth would advance, would reach out into space, would build wonders that rivaled any civilization in any dimension. But they would do it while still knowing how to sit together and share a meal, how to dance badly and not care, how to hug someone when words weren't enough, how to create joy simply by choosing to be together. That was humanity's gift to the multiverse. Not technology or power or knowledge, but the simple truth that connection is everything, that feeling deeply is not weakness but the only thing that makes existence meaningful, and that choosing to share joy with others is the most profound act any being can perform. The visitors had come to Earth seeking something they had lost. They had found it in a small girl offering cake to a stranger, in families gathering despite difficulties, in strangers singing together in the cold, in billions of humans who somehow, against all logical sense, had decided that being happy together mattered more than being powerful alone. They had come seeking emotion, and they had found the truth. The meaning of existence wasn't out among the stars or hidden in some advanced technology or waiting to be discovered through pure logic. It was here, in the simple act of celebrating together, in choosing connection over isolation, in creating joy and sharing it freely with anyone who needed it, even visitors from beyond reality itself. Earth's motto, broadcast now to every dimension, every civilization that could hear it, was simple and true. Come for the joy, stay for the hope, remember what it means to truly feel. And across the multiverse, in dimensions both near and impossibly far, beings who had forgotten how to feel began to remember. They looked toward Earth, that small blue world filled with brief, fragile creatures who somehow burned brighter than all the eternal civilizations combined. They came to remember, and in remembering they began to heal. Humanity had saved the multiverse not with weapons or technology, but with the simple act of knowing how to be happy together. And that made all the difference.